our marriage because he does 4 or 5 things at once, and he has a remarkable capacity to be able to do it. And so we, you know, I'm always saying, you know, sleep is a great invention. That
he has. The stories are that he just doesn't sleep.
Well, he doesn't sleep, and I have to say
that can be just.
Well, you know, when we were dedicating the wonderful center here that the Goldman family has made possible, I said that he's finally met somebody in Prime Minister Barack who apparently sleeps as little or less, because, you know, we had them at Camp David for dinner, and they were up literally all night. Now, Nava and I, being the sensible people we are, went to bed, but the Prime Minister and the President stayed up very, very late. And so it's just that, you know, we have a continuing conversation about that.
About sleep or staying up?
About sleep and you know, about
Would you have to go look for him to see if he's okay?
No, he's always doing something. He's always got, you know, and people...
Surfing the television and all that?
Yeah, well, he watches sports. He watches, you know, thank goodness for the NBA. Yeah, you know, it's on all the night.
Does he like the Yankees or the Mets? I got 2 more questions. One is, so how come this marriage survived all this?
You know, because we really love each other, and we're very committed to our life together, and it's been, you know, an incredible 25 years. Yeah.
Never boring.
Never boring. That's true. That's true.
I've got one more question for you, but before that, we have something we'd like to do here this evening. Saul Adler is the head man here. Saul?
Thanks, Charlie. Thank you, Charlie. And by the way, we've noticed that you haven't been here for a while, Charlie. We missed you. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you.
As Executive Director of the Y, it really is my privilege to say that this is one of the greatest moments in the 125-year history of this venerable institution. So thank you for being here, Mrs. President. It's also my pleasure to introduce 2 distinguished young people. Selena Lewis, the daughter of Jane Goldman and Dr. Benjamin Lewis, and Sarah Arnow, daughter of Amy Goldman, representing the next generation of the charitable Goldman family. Thank you. The plaque is a photo of 2 of our patrons of the Goldman Center, rather young patrons, presented to Hillary Rodham Clinton at the dedication of the Lillian and Saul Goldman Family Center for Youth and Family, 92nd Street Y, February 16th, 2000. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
On behalf of this audience, I have a lot more questions, and I just want to find out exactly when you'll be coming to visit my show so that we can do this on television. Thank you very much on behalf of an audience to sit here and share. It's for those.
Invited guests, please join us in Buttonwieser Hall for a dessert reception. Thank you, and I hope you had a great evening.
ask you specifically, did you have a question that you filled out?
No.
What would you like to ask her tonight?
What I'd ask her. One of the questions that was asked, what would she do after if she did not win? And she is saying she's going to win, so she's awfully positive. I think her confidence impressed me the most.
Why?
Because she had an absolute positive approach to everything she said and everything that was presented to her.
Do you think that's a winning quality for a candidate or just a winning quality for a person?
For a person.
And not a candidate, or?
Not necessarily.
Okay, what's your name?
Judy.
Judy, and your last name?
Krongel.
Can you spell that for me?
Krongel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I get a
How about you? Oh, yeah, yeah.
And you see artists. It's also a place for smart people with great ideas and also for curious people with great questions, a little like a show that I know. I am pleased to be here tonight to do one of the first interviews with the First Lady of the United States, a New Yorker from Chappaqua. A candidate to succeed Daniel Patrick Moynihan in the United States Senate. Whatever she does, however this comes out, it has been, so far, a rather interesting life. Born in Illinois, the daughter of Hugh and Dorothy Rodham, when she got to Wellesley, they asked her to give a commencement address. Life magazine printed part of it, so she was on her way. She went to Yale Law School, met a young fellow there from Arkansas, William Jefferson Clinton. She worked at Washington on the inquiry into impeachment of former President Nixon. Married in '75, went to Arkansas. He became an attorney general and a governor, and she became a partner in the Rose Law Firm, where she was named one of the nation's top 100 lawyers in 1988 and 1991. She moved to Washington in 1992 and to New York in the year 2000. Please welcome the First Lady of the United States, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Welcome to the 92nd Street Y.
I am delighted to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have an hour here of some questions that I hope will be fair and tough and spontaneous and conversational. This is going to be a race that someone said to me is larger than most Senate races that we have been familiar with. I think if there's one thing that has come so far in the politics of this year, when you look at the presidential campaign, is that those people seem to have been rewarded who have been out there asking questions, listening, but taking a sense of where people are. I know you went on a listening adventure of your own, and some of the questions that I have here will be questions that you've heard before. We all want to know what you stand for. We want to know what you believe in. We want to know what shaped you. We want to know what have been the tough times in your life, and we want to know some sense of what you want to do and where you want to go and a lot of other things. Let me begin with the question that's most often asked, and you spoke to this in your announcement speech. Why here? Why now? Why, when you have been through what you have done, why not take a break and just go away and say, you know, I got a lot to think about. Why come here now, notwithstanding the fact that you may have always intended to come to New York after you faced the question of what after 8 years at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue?
Well, that is the case, that we had thought about very hard living in New York after the White House years, because I feel very fortunate that I was, as you quickly described, born and raised in Chicago in the Midwest and gone to school in New England and lived in Arkansas and now in Washington. But like a lot of people, I've always wanted to live in New York. I didn't think I would be moving this year. I thought probably next year would be the time. But as I began to think seriously about what really does motivate me and what I care about, I believe in public service. And I have never held elective office, but I've been involved in public life and activities around issues that I care deeply about for more than 30 years. And I have seen what difference it makes who serves in the United States Senate. Starting as a young lawyer with the Children's Defense Fund, I worked on a project way back in 1973 to ensure that all children were in school, because in those days there were kids with minor disabilities even who were just basically left out of school. And moving on from there, I worked to improve education and health care, and I've had some wonderful experiences in the years leading up to being in the White House in both the public and the private sector. But as a citizen, I always believed that it really mattered who was in positions of public trust and leadership. And I've seen that even more closely in the last 7 years in the White House. I was saying to some people earlier this evening that, you know, ever since I was a young lawyer, I worked on behalf of abused and neglected children, and I used to take cases, and I would make speeches, and I'd write articles, and I would do everything I could to try to improve the lives of foster care children. But in the White House, working with members of Congress in the Senate and the House, we've, I think, made significant strides to improve their lives, and I could talk about many of the issues that I have tried to work on in the last 7 years. And anyone who has seen the progress that our country has made in the last 7 years, I think would agree that the right kind of leadership, whether it's the economic plan in 1993 that only passed with one vote in each chamber, or the crime bill, or the welfare bill, or a lot of the other important pieces of legislation, have directly and indirectly affected our lives. So when New Yorkers began talking to me almost literally the moment after Senator Moynihan said he wasn't going to run, I initially was very flattered and honored, but not at all believing that it was something that I could do. But I kept listening and I kept talking to people, and I realized that the work that I've done for 3 decades is on the issues that we really need to address now. You know, how to strengthen our families and protect our children and improve education and extend health care and keep this economy going so that everybody has a chance to have the best possible job and income. That's what I care about. That's what's motivated me, and I'm very excited about this race.
I want to talk about all those issues and some other things, but let me just ask this at the beginning. Had you before, at any point, when you were in Arkansas, in conversations with your husband, said, someday I'd like to run for public office?
No, but people said that to me often, that I should. But I really believed that I should do what I liked doing, which was being a supportive citizen, being an activist, being a volunteer like so many people are. And I never seriously entertained actually running for office since I ran for college government president at Wellesley. And I hadn't ever thought I would run for office. I wanted always to remain involved in public life, but it wasn't something that I thought would happen. But as I began thinking about all of the opportunities people talked to me about, and there were some wonderful ideas that came my way, I kept coming back to the central motivating force in my life, which is that it really matters who's in public service. And I have to say, Charlie, I'm sort of echoing in the back of my mind were all the times I had said to so many people, oh, you should run, don't give up on public service, don't be discouraged by the negativity, it's really important that people serve. And all of a sudden people started playing back those words to me, and I took them seriously.
This is already a highly competitive race.
Oh, you're kidding.
So, Mike, did you have reservations? Did you know how tough, how brutal this is going to be?
Well, I had an idea, but you know, I didn't make up my mind to do this for a long time. I wanted to be sure that it was the right thing to do for the right reasons. I wanted to be sure that I could win. I wanted to be sure that what I cared about and what I thought the work of a senator would be is something that I could do and do well. And so I spent a lot of time talking to many, many people. I had lots of long conversations with many people here in public life in New York, and I then began the listening tour, and I was really serious about listening. I had not made up my mind, and that's why I said I was exploring, because I wanted to get out around the state and have a lot of occasions to just sit and talk with people, and that's what I did. I mean, I stayed in people's homes, I talked to them around the kitchen table, I was in backyards and on porches, I was in all different kinds of settings, both, in public and in private. And everywhere I went, the issues that people talked to me about was, how do we improve our schools and make sure that they're good from every corner of the state? How do we deal with the problems of health care? And doctors would talk to me, or nurses would talk to me, as well as patients and business people who were paying the bills. Or I would go to upstate New York, and people would say, what can we do to get the economy that's gone so well around the country and is certainly booming in New York City, how can we get the benefits up here in upstate New York? And these are all matters that I care deeply about and that I think are the proper province of people in public life. So I became more and more excited. Now, of course, I knew that it would be tough, and I frankly didn't know how good a candidate I'd be, because...
Well, let's stop there.
No, seriously.
I know, but how good a candidate do you think you have been because you have read?
Right. I'm learning. I'm getting better, but it's a learning and listening process. And I said on Senator Moynihan's farm that I expected to learn a lot, and I have learned a whole lot. And I have been introduced to probably the toughest political environment in the country. There isn't any place as complex and as demanding and challenging as New York is. But I have to tell you, I really love it. Now, don't tell anybody that, because...
What is it you love?
I love getting out and meeting people. I love talking to people. I love being around positive people who want to solve problems. I like the idea that you can bring people together and hammer out your differences in a respectful and civil way and actually help people. And as I've gone around the state, there's a lot of wisdom in the people here who have worked in the area of creating jobs, or who have been on the front lines of education, or who are there taking care of people who get sick all the time. And I love listening and learning, and then I like trying to come up with solutions. I laid out a bunch of my plans after I formally announced, from Buffalo, where I talked about the economy, to Rochester, where I talked about health care, and Syracuse, where I talked about education, and Albany, where I talked about strengthening families, and out on Long Island with Chuck Schumer, where we talked about giving people more tax breaks that will help them in educating their children and caring for their relatives. I enjoy that because I know what a difference it can make. I'm as optimistic about what we can do together today as I was when I was, 21 years old and giving the commencement speech at Wellesley.
I don't think anyone doubts that. Anyone who knows what you did in Arkansas, have made the education battles that you fought for in Arkansas, and the issues that you have involved yourself with from the Children's Welfare Fund, from the Children's Fund, and all those kinds of things reflect someone passionate about policy and passionate about results. There are also these ideas that come forward that when you look at what you have been through, this was an opportunity for Hillary to step out on her own and do something that was of her own, and to make a new life for herself. New life in terms of a new direction. How do you respond to that?
Well, certainly the time in the White House was going to end. There's this unfortunate constitutional amendment that...
Actually, I spoke to him about that and asked him.
I know you did. And it means that, for good reason, 2 terms is the limit. So I was looking at a lot of very attractive alternatives. And, clearly, being able to have a platform to speak and write, or working in a foundation or at a university, going back into the private sector, all of that is very attractive. But I think what really cinched it for me is that as people began coming to talk to me about options in both the public and the private sector, I was really concerned that we had done so much in the last 7 years. I did not want to see us make a U-turn back to exploding deficits and more rhetoric than results about problems. And everything that I've worked on has some relationship to the votes that are taken in the Congress. I'll just give you a couple of quick examples. I mean, someone came to me with a very attractive idea of working in a foundation on behalf of children and family issues, women's issues here and around the world, things I care deeply about. But I know that much of what I care about is going to be affected by who votes in the United States Senate, and especially who votes for New York, because of the influence that New York rightly should have in setting the agenda for the country. So that when I thought